All right, welcome back to the channel. So more welterweight talk today. Keith Thurman goes in on Errol Spence and tells the truth and says, I'm better than anyone you've ever fought. Man, make the fight. I hope for Keith Thurman's case that happens. And honestly, there's a pretty good chance that it can happen because of the way that a certain Terence Crawford is behaving. But let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. So like I said, we're back on this welterweight division. Love this division. Historically, one of the best divisions in the sport of boxing, along with the heavyweight division, the lightweight division, and the middleweight division. You know, my opinion, the four best, weight classes in boxing. And right now, 147 is absolutely stacked with talent. More talent in their prime, talent that may be a little bit over the hill, and exceptional young fighters coming in to the weight class. And the young guys I'm talking about are Virgil Ortiz and Jaron Ennis. The guys that are probably heading out because of the age are obviously the Manny Pacquiao, the Sean Porter, right? Those guys, Keith Thurman. And then you got the guys that are just flushing their prime, like Terence Crawford and Errol Spence Jr. It's just an absolutely great division. Unfortunately, there's a problem getting a lot of these fights taking place. One of the fights that we wanted to see, or I wanted to see several years ago, was the fight against Keith Thurman and Errol Spence. And just like the fight against Terence Crawford and Errol Spence, it's running into a bunch of delays, a bunch of, I don't want the fight to happen, it can't happen because of this or that, right? Happened with Terence Crawford, happened with Keith Thurman. And in the case with Keith Thurman, it happened, Keith Thurman did it to Errol, and right now I believe Terence Crawford is doing it to Errol. But Keith Thurman, who is, without a doubt, with the exception of Manny Pacquiao, Errol Spence, and Terence Crawford, the most accomplished welterweight. He beat Danny Garcia. He beat Sean Porter. He was a unified champion. Very, very solid fighter, man, who got injured. And that's what he's saying, justifies his inactivity with his injuries. And hey, people get injuries. It is what it is. He got an injury. If he didn't really get injured, he didn't really get injured. But he said he got injured. Whatever the case was, that's the justification that he gave for the fights not taking place. And he suffered for it, for sure, because the public turned on him. There was a point in time where everybody was extremely excited about Keith Thurman. But Keith Thurman got the belt and he went Hollywood, right? Because he wanted the Manny Pacquiao fight and the Floyd Mayweather fight. And just like everybody else that had a chance to beat those guys at 147, and they didn't get the fight, right? Didn't get the fight until lately for Keith Thurman, when Keith Thurman was basically coming off 2 years of inactivity. Still thought it was a good fight. Maybe he would have lost to Manny Pacquiao back then. However, he's still an excellent, excellent fighter. And he deserves the fight. And I certainly hope that he gets one. And that he gets the Errol Spence fight. And I think there's a chance that he will. And that's despite what Errol's saying. Because Errol's saying, no, forget you. I'm not fighting you because of everything you did to me when I was trying to fight you. You should have fought me. I was clearly the best fighter. You should have gave me a fight. You decided not to. So I had to leave your weight classes. I had to leave the weight class that you were a champion in. Excuse me, not weight class. I had to leave the sanctioning body that you were in. And anybody else was in, WBC champion as well, and go to the IBF and go way overseas to win against Kell Brook. And he kept, even after he won the IBF belt, he was still calling for Keith Thurman, and Keith Thurman wouldn't fight him for a unification fight. So I can understand why Errol Spence Jr. would say, nah, man, I'm not trying to do it. No way. You're not going to eat with me after you made me go through all of that. That is a very, very natural reaction. That's the same reaction that his stablemate, Jermell Charlo, has towards Demetrius Andrade. People say, hey, man, well, you always bringing up old stuff with Demetrius Andrade and Rock Nation, right? And how that fight fell apart for Jermell Charlo. Dude, it may be old news, but it's still news. You ain't fixed it. You know what I'm saying? Your relationship with Jermell Charlo is just where you left it. So he feels why would he think any different about you? You not done anything to change his mind. He knows you was the guy that ducked out of his fight and cost him a lot of money. So he's holding it against you. Same thing with Errol Spence Jr. In his mind, he's still a guy trying to get a shot at the championship fight, and you're still a guy he knows he can beat, running his mouth and not fighting him. So he may be stuck in that perception. And now you're stuck not getting a fight with him unless he has no other options. Fortunately for Keith Thurman, though, there's a guy named Terence Crawford who is trying to get cute in the 147 division while he has a WBO belt, acting like many other WBO belt champions act. Like that's the only belt in the weight class when you work for Bob Arum. Strange how many people get the WBO belt with Bob Arum, and even stranger how many of them don't care about unifying them in their weight class. They are, oh, I'm just going to move up to another one. Bob wants me to go here, so I'll go where Bob says. Bob says no unification. Bob says you're going to move up and fight there. So, hey, I got to do what Bob says. That type of stuff, right? Not good for boxing at all. Keith, though, as it relates to Errol Spence, is telling the truth. Because he says, look, man, I'm better than anybody you've beaten. And that's true. He's accomplished more and better than anybody that Errol Spence Jr. has beaten. Danny Garcia, he's not beaten your Danny Ugas, but Porter beat Ugas. And Ugas hasn't fought Spence, but that's the next guy he's going to fight. For a belt, no problems with the fight. Porter, he beat Porter. He's better than Mikey Garcia, easy. And he's better than Kell Brook. Definitely, but I think he's better than Kell Brook. So he's saying I lost to Manny Pacquiao off a two-year hiatus. And if I get good wins, why shouldn't I get a championship fight? Especially if you're holding 3 of the belts. I think that is a very solid argument. And one he'll probably, now, this is why I think that there's a good chance he'll get it. Because of Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford is probably not going to fight Errol Spence Jr. because Bob Arum probably doesn't want that fight. Bob Arum likes in-house fights, and I think he's got a plan to take over the welterweight division and have all of the belts in that weight class with Top Rank. And he would probably, if he could pull it off, have all the belts at 130, 135, and 147. Those are the weight classes he wants to compete in and wants his organization to control. Not the fighter, the organization. And if Top Rank, the organization, has all the belts, for him, that's better than undisputed. Because he can make a bunch of fights for all of those belts. And he can only make 1 fight at a time for undisputed. He can make 4 fights at a time if he has all 4 belts. Seems to me that he may think that there's more money in having 4 of the belts versus you having 4 of the belts. Right? One particular fighter. So what will happen? Keith Thurman, Terence Crawford won't fight Errol Spence. If Terence Crawford doesn't fight Errol Spence, right, then who's Errol Spence going to fight? After he's already beaten Danny, Ugas, Porter, Mikey, Brook, who's he going to fight? And Crawford won't fight him. His chance, he's going to get 1 mandatory, right? You get the IBF mandatory, whoever that is, and after that you're going to have a voluntary. So who will you be able to fight? Manny's not going to fight you that you haven't already beaten at that weight class. Terence Crawford won't let you clean it out, right? Because you clean it out as much as you can clean it out when you beat Ugas. The WBO belt, they're not even going to act like they're putting that on the table. So what are you going to do? You got to either move up to 154 where your stablemate has at that point in time will have all the belts. Going to move up and fight Jermell? I don't know. I don't think he's going to do that. It doesn't seem like that's in the plan. So there very well may be an option for Errol Spence to fight Keith Thurman in a pay-per-view if all of the other options are gone. But Keith Thurman should be noted that when you act like that, you become the absolute last option. And I wouldn't be surprised if Errol could not find somebody other than you to fight and get stiff with it and like, no, you have to become a mandatory in order to get it. So fight your way into a mandatory. He may even move up, may vacate the belt. You just don't know. But I hope he gets the fight because I think it would be a really, really good one. And I agree with what he said about being better than everybody Errol's beaten so far. However, that don't mean I don't think Errol's going to beat him like a drum. I do think Errol's going to beat him like a drum. But that's what I think. You let me know what you think. And with that, I'm out. Peace.